So as always, we'll start this week with a little review from last week. So just to let everyone know, we're reading The Happiness Advantage this semester by Shawn Achor. I hope you guys have gotten a chance to watch his 10-minute TED Talk, which is fabulous. I started last week with a quote that he uses by John Milton from Paradise Lost, where he says, "The mind is its own place, and in itself can make heaven a hell or hell a heaven." And I used that quote because I wanted to use that for this year for our goal for the entire year 2016, which is for all of us to make this our heaven. And how we're going to go about doing that this year on our yoga mats and off our yoga mats is sort of our intention for the year. So I started also with a story about one of my friends, and you all have this friend in your life who is a little bit busy up here, stressed all the time, overthinking things, and I loved it because his mom used to say to him, "Oh, to be in your head." And it cracked me up because I used to think about, oh my gosh, to be in his head would really be hell, it would be a nightmare. But I was thinking this week of the opposite of that. What if you were that person that someone were to say to you, "Oh, to be in your mind is so beautiful"? Wouldn't that be the most lovely compliment that someone could pay us, that we have a beautiful mind, or we have a heaven in our mind, that we create that? So I've asked you guys to consider having a 5-minute meditation as a way that all of us can begin the process of training the mind, and also to more and more this year use our practices, our moving meditation. And we're going to look at not only psychology, positive psychology, but also the latter limbs of the Ashtanga 8 limbs, sort of interpreting or intertwining all of that for us to try to improve the quality of our minds, right? So I want you guys to think about this. Shawn Achor in his TED Talk starts off with a graph, which is kind of funny. He says, never start a presentation off with a graph, and he starts off with this graph, right? And it's also in the book, and it has all these little dots which represent the people in his study, right? And I want to read to you what he said about the study. Oftentimes we're studying the average, right? He said, the typical approach to understanding human behavior has always been to look for the average behavior or outcome. But in my view, this misguided approach has created what I call the cult of the average. In the behavioral science, if someone asks a question such as, how fast can a child learn how to read in a classroom? Science changes the question to, how fast does the average child learn to read in the classroom? We then ignore the child who reads faster or slower and tailor the classroom towards the average child. This is what Tal Ben-Shahar calls the error of the average. That's the first mistake traditional psychology makes. And he says, and I love this, if we study merely what is average, we will remain merely average. So in the study, there's this little dot sort of at the top of it. Do you guys remember that? I'm trying to find my little picture. Peeps, peeps, peeps. Who's this little dot up here? The outlier, right? The person who does not fit into the average, the person who, as Shawn was saying, kind of wrecks your research, right? So he's saying, you know, if you want to study how fast the average kid reads, you look at the average. But if you want to study human possibility and human potential, you study the outlier, right? So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about all of you and how all of you, to me, are outliers. Even if you look at the typical, the way that the Americans stay healthy, how we go to the gym or whatever we do to stay healthy. If I look at this room of people, I see a group of people that are not doing what's average, right? If you watched Ashtanga New York, one of the ladies that's interviewed there says, this is a practice you don't flirt with for very long. You're either in or you're out, right? And, you know, and I've often said too, you know, there's a time when we all were going to yoga classes because it was convenient for our schedule and we liked the teacher and we felt good afterwards. But at some point you kind of stopped going to a yoga class and you took this on as your practice. And when you took this on as your practice, it became yours. And it wasn't always convenient. And it wasn't always easy. And you showed up on your mat when you didn't feel like it. That's sort of the difference. We've been talking about this idea of svadhyaya, that this is your discipline. This is something you're dedicated to for a lifetime. So what I want to say, that makes you guys not the average. It makes you the little outliers, right? That you are so disciplined to your health. And as Guruji said, not just your physical health, but your external health, your internal health, and your spiritual health every time you come to the yoga mat. Having said that, what I'd like to do is to challenge you guys, my little outliers. And I'll finish with this today. You guys all understand the Zen concept of the beginner's mind, right? So we know there's the beginner's mind and there's the expert's mind. Quite a few years back, I had been studying with Tim Miller for years and years and years in my Ashtanga practice. And one day I'm doing Mysore and he corrects my chaturanga. Basically like tears it apart and says, you know, do this, and was getting out bricks and all this stuff. And my first mind went to, are you kidding me? I've been doing this forever. You've been my teacher forever. What? And if Guruji had been there, I know what he would have said to me. He would have said, your mind is not correct, right? I was in expert mind. But really what we want to have is beginner's mind. So for me, it took me maybe about 30 seconds to get back to beginner's mind and go, Tim has something to teach me. I have something to learn. I can be better in my chaturanga. I can be better in my practice. And I will tell you that day, I started working on what he had said to me and completely changed my chaturanga, which as you well know, means you change your practice, right? But I had to get out of my own average. So here's what happens, I think, even for those of us in this room, which I would consider all of us the outliers, the not the averages, right? We still get into that pattern of our own boxes that we create, right? So we start to get into our own average. This is what it looks like. This is how I do it. I'm the expert at this, or this is how it's always done, or this is what's right. And in that, sometimes we get into that pattern of like rolling the paper that same direction, that thing that we all can do. So what I want to do is challenge all of you to get out of your boxes, to get out of your average, whatever that is for you, whatever it is on your mat, you know, to go back to that beginner's mind, but whatever it is in your relationships. What would that be like in your relationships? What would that be like in your jobs if you got out of your average and worked towards challenging yourself to be the outlier in that as well, the above average? So anyway, this is what I plan on giving us for the entire year, some little challenges. Namaste.